Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last module that we'll be doing. It is module number 9 for us, and we're going to be talking about engaging naturally with our AAC users. If you are following along and downloading materials from Practical AAC, you'll want to look for module number 7 on there. And this Master Pals program was developed by the wonderful Tabitha Jones Wobler, and Maggie and I have adjusted it a little bit. And we're just so excited, but kind of sad at the same time because this is our
Oh,
last module that we're
how did
talking
that
about,
happen?
but great topic.
Yeah.
I am Gina Antrim. I'm a Basque AAC facilitator.
And hi, I'm Maggie Judson, also an AAC facilitator with Basque. And yeah, I don't know. How did this happen? How are we at our last one?
I know, time flies.
Yes, it does.
All right. So this whole Master Pal series has been wonderful, and it's been all about us developing our skills as AAC communication partners to become supporting exemplar AAC communication partners to our AAC users. And definitely with all the topics that we've covered, I feel like we are definitely getting there.
I know. We are at the end of the Master Pal here. We've gone through it all. Something to keep in mind, we always bring this up. We're talking a lot about AAC today. We talked a lot about AAC throughout the training series, but these are good communication partner skills. These are supportive communication partner skills and strategies that we have been discussing and learning about, and they are supportive to any student that you work with that has language and communication needs.
For sure. Okay, so here's we talked about how we've covered a lot of topics. For the model as a master pal, these are all the topics that we have covered, and you can go back at any time and rewatch any of them. But today we're going to be covering our last one that we haven't hit yet, and that's engaging naturally with our AEC users.
All right, so let's take a minute and break down master pal. So there are two parts to that. The first is master. If you look at the definition of that, that means you're becoming a skilled practitioner in an activity or with a skill set. If you think of it as a verb, it means you're acquiring skills, you're becoming knowledgeable in. So this is where we are learning these strategies and these instructional approaches. We're becoming very adept in them. We are becoming an expert in them, right? Because we
Mhm.
are learning about them, and then we do the extra materials, and then we apply it, and then we meet and we talk about it, right? So we're really diving in so that we are knowing it inside and out, so that we know that we are using best practices and we are using those good foundational skills to support our students.
All right, but then the other important part of this series is not only becoming a skilled practitioner, but then also becoming a pal, a friend, a buddy, a comrade to our AAC users, because they're not going to want to communicate with us. They're not going to be motivated or interested to communicate with us unless they view us as somebody who is interested and wants to communicate back to them.
It's definitely both pieces, and I think every
Mhm.
module hits on that, and today will as well. All right, so we're here at the end. If you have not yet printed out that communication bill of rights, here is another reminder to go do that. Print it out, put it up in your classroom. This is such an important document, not only to review yourself to make sure that you have that mindset and that you are being that supportive communication partner for your students, but then to share with your teams and to share with families and to share in your building so that anybody in the building that interacts with the students is seeing this. So definitely print it out, put it up.
All right. And then just a reminder that AAC really is that umbrella term that encompasses communication methods, but also tools that are used to either supplement or to completely replace speech or writing for those with impairments in their production or their comprehension of spoken or written language. So it really does cover a wide area.
All right, and then one other little thing to keep in mind, if you're here and you're thinking to yourself, I have a student, I'm just not sure if AAC would be appropriate for them. We like to think of it as one question: is their current communication system meeting their needs and letting us know what is on their mind? And if that answer is no, then yes, AAC is appropriate, and we are glad that you are here.
Mhm. All All right, so now on to our topic of engaging naturally. So, to teach language and communicate respect, we definitely want to hit on this area when interacting with our AAC users and students in general. You want to engage naturally.
All right, so a key idea here is that we are engaging in communicative interactions that are person focused, but that are also responsive to the activity that we're doing and the environment. So we've talked about before about like following the child's lead and being that fun pal and making these fun moments happen. This is kind of all coming together here and like putting that all together for us. But the idea is to engage naturally around interactions that are already happening in our day, that are focused around our student, but that are also taking into consideration what is happening around that student to give it a context and to help make connections and meaning.
All right, so just want to do a little activity here, kind of think through about engaging naturally in everyday interactions. So, in a puzzle activity, we're using when we engage, typically we are using lots of different communication functions. You don't just use one. We're not just using words to make requests for our wants and needs. We're using words to protest something, to deny. We're using them to comment, to ask questions, maybe to answer questions, to share and show, to draw attention to something. So we're using our vocabulary for a wide range of purposes. And on that vocabulary note, we're using a lot of different vocabulary words. If you take a look at the phrase examples here, you're going to see that breakdown of that natural breakdown almost of that core vocabulary is going to make up most of the utterances. But then we also have our French here too, with like crackers and cookies. That's the motivating words that we want to be able to talk about. Um, so just keeping that in mind that whenever we are engaging, we're demonstrating and showing the AC users or the students, whoever we're working with, that we use language for a wide range of purposes, and we're going to use a lot of different vocabulary words in order to communicate those different types of utterances. So, like during a puzzle activity, I could comment and say, I like this one, or fun. I could make a statement and say, you love animals. If we keep wanting to do that animal puzzle that makes those animal sounds. I could ask a question. Does it go? Does it fit? Do we need to turn it? I could give a command and say, put it in, turn it. I could give a suggestion and say, try yellow. And then I could give praise and for them and say, you got it, good job. During snack or lunch, we could ask questions again and give them to make a selection here, cookies or crackers. Um, we could talk about the milk maybe and say, oh, make a statement, an observation. Oh, it's not open. And then ask a question, what help? And then maybe demonstrate how to use those words like help. And then, oh, yes, I can help you. Um, Doing a comment that looks yummy, making a statement, I have more, or doing an interjection, uh-oh, maybe something spilled. So as it says down here, use your words, your during these activities and with these phrases, these would be phrases that we would be demonstrating to the child. We would be speaking our words on whatever their AAC system is and providing that wonderful aided language input that we need to be providing all day long to give them that true immersion and really teach them how to use their AAC system. Avoid that imitation task. Repetition, compliance is not communication. We want to avoid those areas. We really just want to draw them in to being motivated to want to have a back and forth conversation during a motivating activity.
And I think like what stands out from that, like engaging naturally, it's about all of those different communicative functions. Oftentimes for students that use AAC, like those activities could easily become where we're just asking questions. What
Yes.
do you want? Tell me you want more. That's not natural, right? That's not how we interact. That doesn't open it up for conversation. It takes a fun activity like puzzles or snacks and can make it boring and can make it a compliance thing and then make it not fun. We're not engaging naturally. But by focusing, like you said, on all those different communicative functions, just doing that aided language input where we're just like doing lots of commenting, like we've talked about before in other modules, it's a great like visual to see those right there, to be like, oh, that's how we keep it natural. We're just talking naturally. We're not turning this into like a task where you have to tell me you want more before you get more every time.
Yeah, definitely.
Then we really like this video here we wanted to share. It's a parent, they're in the home and they're making like gloop or slime. Um, okay,
I think they
and so
call
they're
it
making,
goop, but slime.
that's right, goop, but slime would. And we just love this video because it is like a perfect demonstration of engaging naturally. And they're in the context of this activity, and we'll watch it and then we can break it down.
Ready? That's so gross. Gross. Ew. Uh-oh. Got it. Got on your strap. Ew, gross. Okay, I got it off. Yeah, put it in. Ow, ow. It's stuck. It's stuck on your hand. Judy. There. Get it off. Oh. Got it off. Okay, let's put it in. How much? Ooh, ooh, how much? It's getting long. It's getting longer. Yep. Oh. Okay, wait. Let's put it in, and then we'll watch it. Watch. Oh, it's stuck.
All right. So that is a great video. And if you have trouble hearing it, then we'll link it in the bottom of this video as well, so that you can go directly there and watch the video. But it's a great video. She's commenting on and just describing everything. She's not requiring him to communicate. She is just labeling what he's doing, describing what he's doing, describing what she's doing. She's doing lots of commenting and interjections with "ew, gross, it's on your case, we need to get it off, it's getting longer, oh, this is feels so gross." Like, just being fun and engaging, and he's laughing along. He doesn't once touch that device, but that's okay, because the whole time she's teaching him and she's engaging naturally with him and exposing him to some rich vocabulary and lots of different types of functions of communication. So I think the only thing we've talked about before with this video that would be different would be for her to be on like the same side as him, so that he could definitely have that visual of her finding the different words and everything. But yeah, all right, let's go to the next slide here. Oh, no, don't
It's
do
okay,
it.
we'll watch it again.
Dump. And my video is like right where my other thing is. Ah, no. Okay.
You'll get there.
I will if I would stop clicking. All right. There we go.
There we go. Okay, so like using that video kind of as a model in your head and thinking through those other examples that Gina shared before that. So when we're thinking about engaging naturally, we're doing this so that we're teaching language to our students and to our children, right? We're teaching language, we're working on that communication, but we're also communicating respect and we are building that relationship, right? We're being that good pal. So some things to consider. We really want to make sure that we are providing communication opportunities, right? So I like when I'm like making my schedule, like I'll be like, hey, can I come into the classroom at this time? And sometimes, the staff be like, oh, this is when we're doing this activity. I don't know if that's the best. And I'm like, hey, no, it'll work because we can take any activity and if with a little bit of thought and a little bit of um, prepping ahead of time, we can create those communication opportunities in whatever we're doing, but in a natural way where it's just part of that context. You just have to sometimes think it through and be paying attention to when those opportunities happen or just slightly changing something about how you present it to make that a communication opportunity. So thinking through that and kind of analyzing yourself to make sure that you are taking advantage of those communication opportunities or creating them.
Mhm.
We also want to think of semantics. So for us, right? So semantics means meaning. So for us, we want to think through the language of communication that we're using rather than the language of compliance. So again, this isn't the time to like, we've talked about this so much, right? We're not going to say, tell
Mhm.
me on your device. You want more. You need to tell me on your device. Oh, you said more with your mouth. I need you to touch it on your device. So that's semantics of compliance. That is not going to create a natural engagement. That's not going to foster communication. That's not going to create that snug that we talk about, right? Spontaneous novel utterance generation. So again, it's just thinking through. So change that and go to verbal referencing. Oh, I see you reaching. You want this. And you touch want on the device. You provide that aided language input. You give it to the student. So paying attention to the way you're talking and the way you're phrasing things. We also want to pay attention to language development, natural language development. That is our guide. We talked about this in a whole module where we talked about like, when a student has just a few words, we're going to be providing lots of aided language input for one word or two word combinations, right? And we're going to focus on what we see in normal, natural language development. So that natural language development is our guide whenever we're doing these things. Emotional competence too and self-determination. These are skills developed over time, but also hand in hand with language development. So as we're working on building language development and emotional and competence and self-determination, that's that autonomy, feeling like we have control over our environment and over ourselves. That's going to develop with our language development. So we can use experiences that have emotion. And we're going to talk about this later. Like when there's an emotive experience happening, we can take advantage of that to not only build language, but to build emotional competency and self-determination. Spoiler alert, a lot of it'll be that verbal referencing. I lost my word there. So we'll be talking a lot about that verbal referencing again. So these are some of the parts that we're going to break down and go into some more depth.
Mhm. So whenever we're considering creating opportunities for AAC, Maggie and I think we get asked this question all the time. Like, what's the first thing for good AAC like development and like involvement and everything else? Like, what do we need to do first? First, you have to have access. So I answer every time. You have to have access, and it has to be everywhere. Because if you don't have access to an AAC system, and a way for you to teach communication and for them to have a communication, take advantage of a communication opportunity, you're losing out on both. So you can't provide aided language input and they can't communicate unless they have access to some form. So it doesn't have to be their high-tech speech generating device, or a binder of pictures or whatever it is that they're using, or their pod book, but they have to have some form somewhere close by. So we like to have, you're always wearing your lanyard anyway with your
Mhm.
school ID. Minimize a manual communication board and put it on your lanyard. That way you have it in the hallway whenever you're in the bathroom, when you're outside at recess, when you're in lunch. you have it available so that you're not missing out on communication opportunities. When we talk about minimizing those down, Maggie and I on our Instagram, we like to talk about putting them in luggage tags too, putting it on their lunchbox, putting it on their backpack. So then they have it at lunch, a field trip. They have it on the go whenever they're in the bus and on their way home. They have some form of communication that's within 3 seconds. We like to have it within a 3-second rule. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on the opportunity and then it's just going to be gone. Engineering the environment. So we have classrooms that tape them down to their tables. They hang them up on those command hooks on the sides of filing cabinets or near the centers or different play areas. You attach them to the different bins with different like free time activities in it. So if it's blocks or something, on that lid is attached a manual communication board with access to some fringe words as well. You prepare for wet and messy activities. So don't stray away from those because, it might get their device dirty. No, there's ways around that. Put it in a gallon-sized bag. That's what I've done. Or you can put saran wrap or press and seal over the top of either speech generating device, or just get your low-tech manual communication boards because those are easily reproducible. So who cares if it gets wet or gets slime on it? Doesn't matter. We can throw it away and we can get another one. But access is so important. You have to have communication out and about within their environments and all of their environments in order for you to be able to provide aided language input. And it serves a reminder for you to be providing that aided language input all day throughout the day. And then for them, again, to not miss out on a communication opportunity.
All right, more ways to create those communication opportunities is by establishing habits. We've talked about this in a lot of other modules as well, that once something becomes part of your schedule and part of your routine in the classroom, it makes it easier for everybody, right? It's easier for us as the educators. Our students become familiar with it. It's less new, that anxiety that can be around something new is gone, and we're able to then really delve into the learning that happens from that. So a way to create those opportunities are to establish AAC habits. So let's set some goals here and create a community. We want everybody providing aided language input. So we start with ourselves, right? Because that's the easiest place to go. We work on ourselves. We make sure that we are providing that. But then we want to make sure we are opening that door for everybody. So we want all of the educators in the classroom doing it. We want other students in the classroom doing it. We want peers that come in, or when they're at lunch or at recess, we want other peers to feel like they have that understanding of how to talk in AAC so that they can talk to our students in their language. Getting siblings on board, if a student has siblings, this can be really powerful because at home, that's a lot of where the interactions are happening, right? Between siblings and that interaction that happens there. And it's going to be really up their alley. It's very techy, right? And kids just immediately understand technology in a different way than us adults can because they're native users. So this would feel so exciting for them and have that power to interact with their sibling using their language. So don't think outside the box there and make sure that we're hitting all those other people too that can create that community and really establish that habit. When you're thinking through any of these modules and all of these changes, right, start with an achievable goal. Okay, so my goal is that I'm going to provide this instructional strategy during one activity of the day. All right, and then next week I'm going to do it in 2 different activities, and in a month I'm going to have it in half of my school day. I'm going to be rocking this, right? But really kind of breaking it down, setting something that's achievable so that you can feel successful and realize that, like we say, AC is not a sprint, it is a journey for our students to learn. It's also that way for us. So making sure that you're just making steps though every day to become that good master pal, that's the purpose. So take it slow and just keep at it. We're here at the end of the school year. We don't want to start August back at square one, right? So think through, take a minute before you leave for the school year to jot down, what are things that you're going to start doing right out of the gate when you come back in August? We're going to be putting up those boards right away again. We're going to engineer the environment. We are going to put up we're going to pick 3 activities and we're all going to be providing language input on it day 1, because we've made such progress throughout the school year. We want to make sure that momentum stays there and we can keep building on it next year. Another goal could be to aim to provide aided language input for 3 or more communicative functions in each interaction. I think that's a great one, because we have said before, we often start with like requesting, because it's kind of an easy one to work our way in at. And the commenting, I find myself doing that a lot, commenting. Sometimes I have to stop myself in the moment and be like, hey, have I like protest? Have I demonstrated that? Have I demonstrated asking a question, or telling the teacher I don't understand something so that the teacher can come over and help? There's all these different communicative functions, and you kind of get going in a routine. So it's good to set these goals for yourself so you can keep going and taking advantage of all those different communication opportunities.
And I think make visual supports for yourself too, because I think we were talking about this the other day. The communication functions, the way we've redone our data sheets, like that's a reminder for me, because I, like you, I would get stuck in doing my certain
Yeah.
functions. And although it was more than one in a session, it's still, I wasn't hitting on all these wonderful different types of communication functions. And so making visual supports for yourself, like we talked about, I think in the last module, like the prompt hierarchy, putting that where you need it to be so that it's a visual support for you and a reminder. Same thing here. Like if you need this, if you feel like you're getting stuck in a rut, visuals help everybody. So figure out a visual for yourself and for your staff, and to just remind you to really be giving a nice variety as one of your goals.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then another way when we're thinking about opportunities and establishing those AC habits is to think before, during, and after of an activity. And I think this really comes into play because, like with our routines, they're the same. Our kids get confident, they know where the vocabulary is, they know what to expect and everything. But for those moments whenever that don't occur in a routine and necessarily are part of our structured week or day or anything, this is where we really need to think about like prepping them before, during, and then the after component of it. So good examples would be like field trips, things that like picture day, field day, or whatever, water day, whatever it's going to be. The field trips, like I said, like go into the zoo or something, really prepping them for what's going to happen, access to different vocab, maybe going over things that we may say in different areas of the zoo, um, and who we may be talking to, and again, what we can be saying. And sometimes we may have access to our speech generating device. And other times, maybe that day it's going to come in and it's not going to be working, or in the moment, it's not the best place for that SGD. Maybe we're in a cave or something, looking at some fish. And so it's not the greatest light. So we just need a low tech board. So knowing where the vocab is on both of them and really prepping them, again, with the vocabulary and the different types of language and utterances that we could be using for who we're going to be talking to that day and what we may want to say. But then during the actual field trip, so we've done some prep work, maybe we read a social story to go with that and did some practicing, but then during, let them enjoy the moment. Think about us too. If when we go, Maggie and I talk about this all the time, like if we go hiking and like you get to the top part and you're at the viewpoint, you just want to take in that scenery. You've worked so hard to get up there to that viewpoint. You don't want somebody talking to you about it. You just want to absorb the beauty of the nature and, your achievement of getting up there and what you get to look at. Same thing with the zoo. Sometimes those animals are doing some really cool stuff. You don't want somebody yapping at you necessarily and providing all kinds of noise about what the animals are doing. That's new. The lion's roaring, and like the lion never roars when you go to the zoo. So it's something different and new. Just anything like that. Just let them think about yourself and how you would like to enjoy the moment, and give them that respect and let them enjoy the moment. And ways that you can then go back and provide some of that rich vocabulary and really talk about or write about what happened that was so cool and different or new, would be to take pictures, take videos during that time. Erin Sheldon talked about, I think one of the conferences that we went to, they went to a castle or something. Um, and she really observed her daughter and the feedback that her daughter was giving her, and that her daughter really just wanted her to be quiet and enjoy she wanted to enjoy and take in everything that she was seeing. So that's when all of our media that we have so readily accessible for us is great. Take pictures, take videos, and then what's great is you can relive those moments then later. And that's when you can provide that rich aided language input while you're watching, looking through the pictures, watching the videos. Then you can expose them to some of that vocabulary and those different rich communication functions. And again, providing that rich language, aided language input during that time. So I think, yeah, just really providing respect, thinking about how you want to enjoy the moment, and during those opportunities, and knowing when to push and when not to, and stand back and just let them have it and find another way to talk about it later. So that's where we talked about that verbal referencing, that observation really comes into play here. Pay attention to what their body and what they are maybe saying to you, either unaided or aided, and respect that, and then just find another time to be able to communicate about it in another opportunity.
A team and I were just talking about that, like in the moment, taking a video and instead of trying to like make it happen if it's not, if it's not the right moment for that. And she's like, this is getting my wheels turning. She was even thinking about like during cooking time,
Yeah.
that usually like a very, they've been working all week towards it, like, talking about it. And then on Friday is the cooking time and it's so exciting. Everybody's into it. It can be hard to like fit in the AAC because everyone's kind of got busy hands. They're all over here, but then it's also fun and kids are just enjoying, the students are just enjoying what's happening. And so she was like, this is a great idea. I could take a video, then we could talk about it later and then send it home. And then you can show parents like, and then you can say, these are the words that we focused on when we watched the video. So it's a great carryover activity too. So we just love that idea. It's so good. All right. And then, so Gina touched on the before and the during. We also want to think about after, right? So after we get back, we went through this activity. Maybe we did some aided language input in the moment. Maybe we took a video. When we are done with the activity, let's talk about the activity using the AAC. This is especially great if you took a video or you took some pictures. Now is the time to go back and think of that rich vocabulary, like Gina was saying, think through all the different communication functions. You can do verbal referencing of the student in the video. Be like, oh, I see you jumping up and down. I think that means you were very excited. And then we can use the AAC to provide that aided language input. So we're still taking that opportunity that arose and we are taking full advantage of it. But we also were being really respectful of that student in the moment. And that helped to forge this relationship together, that we're helping to build our relationship, that we didn't, annoy them. Or like Gina said, someone's like constantly yapping at me. We weren't doing that. Then talk about those photos, but revisit them. Maybe you took video and some pictures, and now you're going to use those pictures all next week to write about that activity and create a book then to send home or to keep in your classroom library. So you took this opportunity that was so motivational and awesome for your student, and you are working it in lots of different ways to make sure that you are doing things that they're interested in. Oh, this is a great one. Then you can have your student like go and talk about that activity with other peers or other students. They can take those photos around. I have a student that does this all the time. They have an iPad with an app on it for their communication system, and she will go to her photos to like share about a story. So that like she'll take a picture over the weekend and then she'll go to those photos and show me. She'll just point to it and then I ask some questions with the smile. I mean, like it's so exciting. And that's another way for us to communicate. Like we said, AAC is a variety, it's an umbrella term of tools that we use. Showing pictures is a way for us to communicate. So this kind of starts bridging that for them. And then, I jumped ahead here. So if that activity was especially motivating, turn it into a book. Take time to write about that experience, add the pictures in, and then send it home, print it out, keep it in the classroom library, have them take that around to all the other people to show the book that they helped to write. So it's just, you can turn this into so many different activities.
And then just think about the repetition with variety too that we've talked
Yes.
about before, and then how many exposures they've had to those vocabulary words and the different functions, and not just receptively, how much time you spent with this activity and everything, but then, their expression wise time there as well. It really is a nice, robust opportunity that you're, like you said, you're
Mhm.
taking full advantage of. Um, so just don't be afraid to do that. All right. And then use language that focuses on communication. We talk about this all the time, that it's not an imitation, compliance task, or motor task that we're asking them to follow through on. That's not communication. Communication is them telling us something that we didn't know that they were going to say. I always go back to like that first picture of those two people and the messages going back and forth to each other, and you don't know what the other person's going to say. That's communication. Um, so saying, "Hey, tell me about this," or tell me, like Maggie said, if the picture is about over a cookie, oh, tell me about this cookie. Did you make cookies over the weekend with, did you go to grandma's house or something? Tell me about this. Not, oh, let's go hit the cookie button. No, that's not communication. Uh, Saying, I want to know what you think. We talk about this all the time, that whenever you are waiting, that you're not waiting and writing notes down or talking to somebody else. That's not waiting, and that's not respect to the AAC user. When you're waiting, you are looking at them expectantly. You're letting them know that I want to know what you have to say, and I'm going to sit here and give you the time that you need. I am interested in what you want to tell me about this. Um, so that is a great way to get some and elicit some language, not telling them what to go find on their device. Um, and then validate communication attempts. We've touched on this before as well, that if they say something sometimes that may be out of the blue, it may be because it's a topic they really want to talk about, but it doesn't relate in any way to what you guys were doing. So in those times you can talk about, like, that's interesting. We can talk about that later during this time. Maybe we'll put that on a board and we're going to write about it later. You can say things like, maybe you're full of surprises. But if it is something that you can relate to whatever the activity is that you're doing or the topic that you're covering, do that. Sometimes it sounds completely out of the blue, but it may be a way for them getting at what they want to talk about with that activity. Um, so not shutting them down and saying, no, that's not the right answer, but validating what they're saying and giving some meaning to it. That's where that teaching comes into play, is us attributing that meaning to the any kind of communication attempt that they have.
And then we talked about earlier that natural language development is our guide. And we've touched on this in other modules too, right? So we really want to make sure that we're thinking through how language develops and the kind of words that we see in natural language development, and also the interaction patterns that we have when we are thinking about natural language development. We really want to make sure that we are using those too when we are talking with students who use AAC. So, if you have so you'll see over here, the child is saying something, and then us as the communication partner, the way we respond to that is what shapes it and helps to build those skills. Okay, so if a child, some early first words are usually very fringe heavy, but they're high frequency words that are really meaningful to them, right? So cup, ball, go up, mama. So if a child would say that to us, we know that they are using one words. So we are going to phrase that. We're going to add to it, thinking that one up method. So we want to like add another word to it or put it into a short phrase. Again, we're providing that aided language input for those keywords. But so the student says cup, oh, you want the cup. Up, go up. it goes fast. So you take that word, you add 1 or 2 words to it. And then you can see here as it goes down, as a student starts putting 2 words together, we're going to then also be putting 2 to 3 words together. And when a student is saying 3 words, we're going to be doing 4 to 5 words. We're always going to think one up. We want to reframe it and add different words to it to show different word combinations, to put different meaning to those words. But again, paying attention to the context and what's happening around it. After, though, we get to that point, we can also be thinking through, like, here at the bottom. So if a student is making longer phrases, we can be like, oh yeah, he turned it off. My bike broke. Grams is coming. Thank you. That's helpful. Oh, how did that happen? Oh, you're going to have fun with her. So that's where we're making comments and we're opening up for that conversation. That can be happening through all of these levels, right? But if a student says one word to us, we don't need to provide an aided language input for, a whole sentence on the device. We have talked about this before, where you can just do that one-up method. That way you are showing a student how to combine those words at that level of language development.
For sure. All right. And regardless of how your child or AC user is communicating to you, whether it's unaided, aided, if they're using verbalizations, we as communication partners are going to continue to provide that aided language input, to continue to teach them how to use their AC system or where to find those words in the future during a communication breakdown, or just as they continue to make their communication more efficient and effective. We need to continue that teaching piece by providing that aided language input. We're not asking them to then repeat it or anything like that. We're just speaking our words on the AC device. So Maggie was touching on this whenever she went through her examples there. But with these opportunities, when they do communicate to us, we accept whatever they do, whatever modality they're using to communicate to us, we accept it. But then we're just enriching it, like she said, by repeating it, reframing it, extending it, and we're giving those natural responses. And when we're going through these, one of these processes, or more, you are just providing that aided language input. Then you're speaking your words back to them on their AAC system to help teach them. So, and those different rich strategies that we can use to help grow their language and improve it would be to repeat their response with that affirmation and everything. So they said cookie. Okay, yeah, we're going to go find cookie on their device and say, Cookie, you told me cookie. Let's go get a cookie. We're going to reframe it. So if they came up to me and they put their arms up, I know that they want up. Oh, you want up, and show them where those words are, doing that one up strategy, like Maggie said, which then goes into this next one with extending. We're always wanting to provide them with more vocabulary. That's how they're going to learn more vocabulary, is by us showing them how to add these words, and that these words go together to make their messages more complete, more efficient, and more effective. And then, of course, you're going to give that natural response. So you're going to respond to everything that they say, um, with either a comment, answering a question maybe that they have, but we're using, again, their AAC system. That's the key here, is that we are providing that aided language input on their AAC system so that we can teach that AAC system to them, and we can teach that vocabulary and that language of how to put words together visually to them.
And then keeping in mind, right, that communication is reciprocal. So this is our goal, right? That we are having a conversation, that we are leaving space for the student to process what we said and the space to respond. Also, for us, we've been touching on this every single time. You're going to speak your words while using the child's device. So you're going to speak your words. That's that aided language input. This isn't about making the student say anything. This is us talking to create that immersion in their language system. So things that we've talked a lot about, we're going to go into some more depth. Verbal referencing, that's where you might hear called like linguistic mapping. So this is where, right, you see them doing something, you comment on that. Oh, I see you putting your arms up. I think that means you want up. Let's get up. Think alouds. We did a whole module on these. This is great. Now that we're at the end, we can be like, remember, we talked about that in
Yeah.
another module. All coming together here to all the things that we've learned are coming full circle. Those think aloud strategies where we're talking about the thought processes that are going on in our mind. We're talking about the things that we're thinking about. We're talking about the things that we're seeing and that we're doing. Those are those think alouds. And then descriptive language. This is a good one. We had a whole module on it where we talked about how you can describe a word, you can describe an event, you can describe an academic term with lots of core vocabulary. That way we are giving lots of that rich opportunity to see that different vocabulary in use in context.
Mhm. Okay, and then remember communication, go back to that little visual. Communication is reciprocal between two people. It has to be, otherwise it's not communication. So, but these strategies again that you're going to be using are that again, it's just to teach them the language, how to put the words together, and introducing them to new vocabulary words is by expanding. So we like to refer it as like a one up, so that you're always going adding at least one more word um, to whatever utterance or communication attempt that they gave you and shaping it. So you're just going to model a little bit more than what the child says and shows. And again, it's just exposing them to more rich vocabulary, showing them how those words can go together just to make their communication more efficient and more effective when they are communicating. And I think we've given a few examples of that. Encourage, but don't require language. Again, we want the whole point of this is to avoid compliance. We're not saying tell me or find, things like that. Say this on your device. No, we're encouraging that language and that communication, that back and forth between us that we want to have. So, using gestural cues or those expectant looks and pauses, like we've talked about, to show that we're interested, we're giving them time, we're waiting because we want to hear what they want to say. So, those things encourage that response. They show that respect, they build that rapport so that you really do become a master pal with the AC user, and they are motivated and want to communicate to you because they know that you're going to be somebody who's going to wait and is actually interested and going to respond and not just be dismissive with any kind of communication attempt. Ask open-ended questions. The best way to do this, we've talked about before, is like during reading, shared reading activities, is to kind of get yourself used to doing open-ended questions. But then, like as Maggie said, and there was that example with the picture, tell me about this weekend. You took this picture over the weekend because it's new. Can you tell me about it? Or tell me what you did or what you liked about this. You guys went to the zoo yesterday. I want to hear how your trip went. And then waiting and pausing. You are eliciting that language through those open-ended opportunities, and really so that you can get whatever, and then you can shape and expand whatever they tell you, but it's not a direct question requiring only one type of response. That's not great communication. Whenever you have these open-ended types of experiences, that's where you're getting that true communication that we don't know what they're going to say. And then we can shape and teach from there. And be okay with accepting no response. Sometimes that's going to happen. They're not going to want to communicate about it. Maybe they're having a tired day, or they're having trouble, can't act, whatever it is. They may not want to respond or talk to you that day. And that's okay. Just keep on providing that aided language input.
Again, thinking through communication being reciprocal and going back and forth. The communication partner, us, we are 50% of the interaction, right? And thinking that through, what you give is going to influence what you get, right? So if we are coming with all of these awesome modules fresh on our mind, we are that master pal, we're going to be giving a lot of good support and a lot of good instructional techniques. So we're probably going to get more from that student, right? When we come and we are giving kind of a negative attitude. I mean, that happens sometimes, even for us adults, right? We talked about that. Like, it's
We
okay to
have our
like,
good and bad days
yeah,
too.
it's okay to like leave a conversation, right? It's okay. Like if you're not helping the situation, it's okay to leave, because we know what happens when we come with that kind of an attitude. We're going to get that back, right? We're not going to get these good interactions. So thinking that through again, it really puts the onus on you, which is good because then you have control over this, right? You have control over yourself. So then you have control over the way you are bringing your 50%. So think through though, again, that when you are giving, we're giving that 50%. It's going to influence what we're getting. Okay. But getting isn't always a verbal response. So the get, what the student is giving back to us, it may be related to other things that are going on. So their receptive language, what they're understanding from us. So again, thinking through what we're giving, maybe we need to use simplified vocabulary, using words that we know the student has been exposed to, that repetition with variety. So we want to think through that. We have to think about our relationship with this student, right? Like all those other modules, it's coming here full circle. If we haven't spent time building a good rapport or nurturing our relationship, that give and get is going to not be what we hope it's going to be after we have built that relationship up. Fostering that confidence and esteem, it goes back to how these natural interactions are respectful interactions. So if we've been respectful, we've helped the student build up their understanding that they have an influence on their environment and them as a person, we're going to get a better get. And then again, that expressive language. So that could be that they're using their communication device. It could be that they are using body language, right? Like they are giving us a response, but it could be in a variety of ways. With a eye roll, hey, they're responding. Getting up and leaving the interaction, they're responding. So it's not just about what they're doing on the communication device, it's about their whole multimodal communication system, and us acknowledging that, being observant of that, and allowing that to be part of that space. And then just provide verbal referencing, provide aided language input, and keep that conversation going. All of these things feed into that respectful interaction that we are going for.
For sure. Okay, I feel like there's a lot of like buzz about like the different types of love languages out there. There's like 5 different types or something. Um, and like knowing your partner's love language. Well, the same thing goes for our kids. We need to know what makes them tick. What is going to really motivate them? And so every kid is going to need something different. And so it's just finding out kind of what that is and then playing into that to help increase the motivation and the engagement and everything. And we touched on this during our motivation module,
Yep.
paying attention to this. But, if they need a lot of affirmation, they need to be told. We have some kids who they're like perfectionists. They need to be told that what they're doing is right and that it's good. They should be proud of themselves. We're proud of them. Lots of like, sharing and showing of stickers and like pluses and smiley faces and whatever else. So if that's what makes your kid tick, play into that. They need some of them may need purpose. So classroom jobs or chores. There are some kids that like, that's how I've gotten with some of my older kids, communication was like going on whatever their chores or classroom jobs were out in the school environment. And that's where we would hit a lot of communication aspects with the different people that we would interact with during those tasks and everything. Social reinforcement, structure, routine. A lot of our kids, actually, I think almost all of them, structure and routine plays
Yep.
into success for them. So I think that's almost in all of them, but maybe some of them is just a little bit more than others. Some of our kids need to feel control over their environment. Some Sometimes there's just so little that is within their control that we need to provide them with things that show that they do have control over their environment and what happens to them or the conversations that they take place in and everything. Choices again for that control or for focus during different tasks and everything that they're doing. uh, and all of our kids, they just want to feel safe, loved, protected. So definitely creating that environment for them. And whenever you're developing that rapport with them, letting them know that you are a safe person and that you do care about them and what happens to them. And then freedom to kind of explore and try and make mistakes, and that's okay. But understanding, like we said, what makes a student tick is really fundamental to supporting them and really building that motivation and that interest and that engagement piece for communication.
And then some other things to kind of think in mind, or keep in mind, or think in mind, however you want to say it. Limited communication equals we don't know what our kiddos know. So if our students don't have a robust AAC system, because the team has not yet given them one, they're going to have limited communication, which naturally means that we aren't going to know what they know. We need to presume that potential that they know a lot more than they're able to communicate to us because they are lacking in a robust AAC system. And we're going to start working on that ASAP so that they can get that vocabulary in their hands so that they can start telling us what they know. Understanding communication is hard work. Okay, it is. And for our students, when they have an AAC system, there's processing that goes in that, there's motor planning that goes in that. You add in other complex body things to that. That's hard work. But expressing respect for our students' abilities and their personalities, that is going to all together is going to increase the willingness to put in the work and then increase improved communication. So us having that respect for our students and demonstrating that through all of these different modules that we've talked about, like just referencing back to the slide that you just went through, Gina, that's giving our students the things that they need. And when we give somebody the things that they need to be successful, we are demonstrating respect for their current abilities, for their personality. Like that one, like you said, I think all of our students need a routine and a structure. I know I need that.
Yeah.
And if I can have that, like that makes me feel like you understand me. And I like that, And when we like somebody, like we said, in lots of different modules, when we like someone, we are more willing to do things for them that are hard. We are more willing to try this thing. We are more willing to do this. So they're going to be more willing to put in the work, which then of course will improve communication, which will then cycle to the top because now their communication is growing and they can tell us and show us more of the things that they know.
Mm-hmm.
So it all goes
It
together.
is. It's funny how many things we talk about that they just everything plays a part and just is integrated within and woven into each other. So it's important to pay attention to each little part because it has a big impact later on. All right. So we also spoke about in the beginning, another consideration for engaging naturally is emotional competence. So we're going to kind of touch into this and talk about it on the next couple slides. But when communication is already difficult, like Maggie said, thinking about like complex body issues and just like accessing and then having access to robust language and vocabulary and everything, when it's difficult developmentally or due to a delay or a disability, and then you've got these other components playing into it too, with understanding, expressing, and processing emotional events can be even more challenging. And so we're going to talk about how that really does play an impact on our language, our cognition, and our ability to communicate during emotional events and how we can teach through that.
All right. So, in the literature, we're going to get a little nerdy here. There's a reference right down there. So, let's think through the literature behind this. The article that is referenced here, it's how language skills impact emotional competence and then implications for use in AAC. So, emotional competence refers to our ability with our emotions for coping with a changing environment. So, this is our skill with how we're able to handle changes. And I mean, our skills can change day to day. I know they do for me, right? Like one day, you're rocking it. You can handle these changes. The next day, you cannot. And it is throwing you for a loop, right? So these are skills, like we said earlier, they develop over time. But even as an adult, we can really empathize with this, I think, because we all have our days and our moments. But thinking through it from a developmental standpoint, developing emotional competence, it is one of those key things that promotes readiness for learning. If you have a child, think through like my kiddo has a late spring birthday. So we did that gift of a year where we waited for kindergarten for a year because we knew that his emotional competence was not ready for a full day of readiness to learn, right? So those skills definitely help with readiness to learn. Again, with expressive vocabulary skills, with young children, it can be predictive of self-regulation skills. And that makes sense because if we are able to express how we're feeling and we can express what we need, we are better able to like demonstrate self-regulation skills. If our expressive vocabulary is not at that level, we're going to have a hard time telling you what's wrong with us. We're going to have a hard time telling you what we need. You're probably going to see more behaviors because behavior is a form of communication. And if I don't have the words to communicate how I'm feeling right now, and this is hard in general, I think we were talking about this, like, there's that information out there that when we're upset, our IQ drops for anybody, for adults, for everybody. So when your IQ drops, your expressive vocabulary becomes harder to access and to use. And so if I already have a delayed expressive vocabulary and now I'm upset, my expressive vocabulary has gone down even lower. So I'm going to have a hard time using those self-regulation skills.
These other modes
So,
of communication.
yeah, exactly. I'm going to use my behavior to communicate. I do this too, when you're in the car and you're upset, you use your behavior to communicate. So it makes a lot of sense when you think of it and you can analyze your own self in terms of that for sure.
I was gonna say, I for sure, whenever I'm upset, I can't find words that I want
No,
to express
it's
myself fully, and I have to
no,
wait, and then later calm down, and then
yeah.
you can express exactly your point of view and where the frustration came from. But I think it's just being very aware that in the moment that happens to us,
Yeah.
it's definitely happening to our kids, typically developing, and then also our kids for sure who have delays or difficulties with their language and communication. So just being very cognizant and respectful of that and understanding that we have to teach this, but we don't teach it in the moment. This is one of those things you teach in the moment. It's not going to be teachable in the moment. You gotta wait until we've calmed down. If you use those zones of regulation, like you're in that green zone or somewhere where we are able to learn, we're at that readiness, like Maggie said. So continuing with that study, they talked about how for 7 to 9-year-old children, there was a correlation or a close relationship that emerged between language competence and emotional competence. So again, it's just like when we have access to like more robust vocabulary, we're able to express our emotions better. Again, our language skills as they develop and we have more understanding, we're able to then um, demonstrate and express what we're feeling, why, and our understanding of a situation or how we interpreted, why we reacted the way we did. Those things are, again, they're integrated and they're going
Mhm.
to develop together. They impact each other. The study also found that providing emotion symbols is not likely to enable a child to learn to identify and label emotions unless,
Yeah.
like we've been talking about at the end of every module, a key component that is provided is that modeling or that aided language input. You have to teach, we can't just provide them with it and then them understand it. Think about whenever you, as an educator, were first given a core board. You didn't know what to do with it. Like, what's this? Like, yeah, you could read the picture or see the pictures, you could read the words, but you didn't know what to do with it. Not until you were taught and shown and given plenty of examples. And your learning continues to evolve as you continue to seek out more education on this topic and everything. Same with our kids. We have to provide that aided language input. We're providing them access to these words. We're teaching them about these words when they are in a state of readiness, not in the moment. Um, and with other examples and everything. So while we're reading a book, and certain situations arise and emotions, or watching a different cartoon show or something, or maybe something else happened with another student in the classroom, and you can take advantage of that opportunity because your student is at a state of readiness. And so we can talk through, like, what happened, why it happened, how that, how the different people were maybe feeling, and what could have happened differently, and just like work through that. But it all has to be taught, and it has to be taught more than once, has to be taught with repetition, with variety, um, everything that we've talked about before. But this is just something to definitely keep in mind. It's not going to happen overnight. And even if you have taught it, again, it's just going to take time, because as Maggie said, when we're in the moment, we forget what we were taught. We just have our feelings, and we're all in our feelings. So I think just being super aware of everything that plays into emotional competence with language and communication, and being prepared for that and how to handle and work through it. All right. And we have more.
All right, so yeah, there's more, because this is an important one. I think often, because it's like when we are saying that behavior is communication, and it's in response to something that our student wasn't able to express because they don't have those words
Mhm.
yet, that we can, it often becomes like kind of like a, now they're getting a consequence, right? like there's going to be a consequence because you hadn't, like, there was this emotion to it, or this behavior to it, when that's kind of then robbing us from that opportunity to build this connection and to use that as a learning opportunity. So it's complicated, there's lots of pieces to it, but with all aspects of language development, kids need demonstration, right? That's how that's how we learn any language. And with any development within our language system, it is taught through demonstration, in context, in the moment, in ways that make sense to our brain, to learn how to use language to work through these difficult emotions. So again, we're going to identify that emotion. We're not going to question it. Oh, are you sad? We can see that they are crying, right? Let's use our verbal referencing skills that we have been practicing all school year. I see you are crying. I think that means you look sad, or you feel sad. Then we can determine that why. Maybe you can first open it up to allow them to have the space to tell you. Tell me about it. Give them that opportunity. Maybe they respond, maybe they don't. Okay, if they don't, then reflect on what you saw or what you knew about the situation. Say, oh, I saw that you were building with blocks over there. I wonder if something happened. Oh, look, the blocks are on the ground. I wonder if they fell over. Or you can ask them very specific questions like who, what, where. Try to help them, you know, get down to being able to tell you. It's like when you're like, how was your school day? Fine, that's too broad. You need to like put it down a little bit, give some specifics to help give a guideline for your student. And then process the situation. This is step 3. And this is where we're putting that learning to that behavior, right? Like we are saying this behavior was communication. Now we're going to put those instructional strategies to it to help develop those language skills. So we're going to discuss why we were feeling sad. We can talk about things that we can do to make it better. And then we can make a plan for the future or next time. And all this time, we are making sure that we are talking at a level that is appropriate for our student. We are working in their AAC system. We're providing aided language input. And we are making this, this is a definite communication opportunity right here, right? And like Gina said, this is going to have to happen over and over
Oh
and
yeah.
over and over and over again. But we have to do this in order to teach those emotion words, right? Like these aren't things, we practice these, like when we read books, we talk about emotions. When we watch videos, we talk about emotions. We also have to talk about the emotions that we are feeling ourselves, because it is a complicated process for sure.
All right. So when we're talking about this, just remember that it can be difficult to process emotional events in the moment. Again,
Yeah.
everybody's IQ drops. Everybody's. Whenever you get to a certain emotional level. So just in the moment is not the time to try and teach or talk about it. Like Maggie said, like you could ask them, like, uh, if you're ready to tell me about it, you can, and then see if they do take advantage of it. But most likely not. They need time to just like calm their feelings, to just work through what is happening internally, just like we do. We don't want somebody to keep coming at us and giving us all that noise and everything. That's just going to make the situation worse. This is a time to practice patience and waiting, for sure, because you, it's just going to exasperate the situation. Understanding and coping with difficult moments is its own process. So difficult situations will reoccur, just like we've been saying. It's going to happen. This isn't going to be, oh, we talked about it. We watched a book. Like you said, we read a social story. We read it in another book. We watched a video. We had a lesson on it. Woo, we're done. No, this is going to take years. Um, for some may not, but most likely you're going to take years. This needs to start in pre-K with our verbal referencing skills of like whenever, the tower got knocked down and that was very upsetting with the blocks, talking through that and then revisiting it later. You're starting from then on with your students of teaching them that emotional competence and giving them the language and giving them the vocabulary and showing them how to work through these situations. And then eventually they will be able to process and work through it a little bit swifter. But just like we need compassion, not discipline, punishment, or consequence because of something that's happening and our emotional response to it, our students need that too. They're going to have challenging behaviors because they don't have the words. They don't know how to express what's going on with their body and what they're thinking and feeling because of the situation. Compassion and understanding are going to go so far with these situations versus immediate punishment or discipline or some kind of consequence. Like we said, it's just not the route to take at all. So how I love this quote over here: have patience, all things are difficult before they become easy. I think we know this in life in general. It's a life motto. Things are going to be difficult before they become easy. You have to put in the work before you get like the reward or whatever. You have to put in the work with these things, and then you get to see those bright outcomes later on. And when a student is able to handle a situation or move through it quicker even, those are those little wins to definitely celebrate for them. Like it didn't destroy their whole day. It only took up, when it gets to where it's only a 5-minute meltdown. Woo woo. So those are wins to take, and just having patience and understanding and compassion are the takeaways here.
So engaging naturally, right, to teach language, to communicate respect, all of this is feeding into building that positive and respectful relationship. We know the importance of that. We've touched on it throughout all of these modules. And that kind of goes down to this feeling that we're letting our students know that I believe in you and I want to hear what you have to say. And that is so powerful when we know that we have somebody in our corner, right? Like it makes us feel good about ourselves and it makes us want to be more active in what's going on around us, so that definitely holds true for our students. This will all come together for that.
Everybody, you're going to come out of your shell whenever you're comfortable around somebody. Versus not. Okay. So again, we just want to talk about like that respect and rapport portion, just like Maggie was just talking about, and having them come out of their shell. These things are all conveyed, that PAL piece especially, when your tone of voice that you have, your body language, your turn towards them, the eye contact with them, your facial expressions that you use, and the words that you choose to express yourself, your understanding of what they're saying or trying to communicate, your vulnerability to them, and what stories that you're going to express in your experiences. Patience is so huge. It's hard, but patience. And to establish like those healthy boundaries, because yes, we are the staff and they are the student, so definitely having those boundaries. But again, showing that respect to them is going to be huge, and that we are interested in what they have to say at that personal level. Um, is just going to go so far with motivation and engagement, and actually able to have some of these natural interactions with them. Uh, but of you really need to avoid talking critically about the student in front of the student. This is, I think, one of my biggest pet peeves. You can't, they hear you. They know exactly what you're saying because of tone of voice, body language, your facial expressions, the words that you choose to use, and the fact that you're not involving them in that conversation. Like whenever talking about how a student is feeling that day or their abilities, like involve them in that conversation. Make them a part of it, not talking about them. Um, Forget, I think, I don't want to give credit where it's not due, but I think it was on Kate Ahern's site talking about if the student was to go on and to write a book and talking about what chapter you want to be in that book. I think about that all the time. And even before I saw that, just as a mother, thinking about how I want my children treated. And I'm going to treat them, my students I work with, the way I would want somebody to treat my child. Um, I would not want them being talked about and made to feel low during this time. So just considering that and thinking about that whenever you're working with your students, for sure.
And then all of that feeds into this attributing meaning and developing that I am a valued member of my classroom, that I am valued by the educators around me, that I am valued for who I am right now, right? And we do that by attributing meaning to all of those different things and all of the ways that we are interacting with the student, like Gina just referenced on that page above. Attributing meaning to verbal and nonverbal communication, actions, and participation. So that's that verbal referencing that we've been talking about. So that helps to build meaning related to communication and learning. Oh, your body is doing this, it can mean this, and then we are putting those words to it to teach that vocabulary, but we're honoring how you are already communicating. It validates the contributions that that student is already making to the classroom community and that they're already trying to foster relationships. So if we give meaning to the ways that they are communicating, that is going to create that feeling of I am important to the classroom. I am valued. I am contributing, right? Like I am an active participant, what's going on around me. And that's huge for developing those feelings of having control over yourself. Attributing meaning invites continued participation and engagement, right? Like that feeds into that. If you feel like you are valued and you are being listened to, you want to engage, you want to participate. And that's a cycle too, right? Like that creates that positive cycle of engagement. And I mean, it builds self esteem. So, this is necessary to develop those self determination skills, those self actualization skills, feeling like you are having control over your life and the decisions that are happening around you. You have control over that. Those are necessary to achieve a high quality of life. So, like thinking back to that slide that Gina just talked about, like all of those things, like eye contact, body language, making sure that we are involving the student in any conversations about them, like those are take practice, but they're pretty simple things that we have total control over. We have total control over those things, and it creates a student that has positive self-esteem. Like, isn't that wonderful? You know, and it's also developing their language and communication skills bonus. So it's like so perfect.
All right, so embrace the relationship, honor each child's humanity, and then learning will happen. It will come. We talked about all these little parts that we've talked about along the way throughout the different modules and the different webinars and everything that we're doing. Just they build into each other. And as Maggie said, like, just take each part and the big picture will come. Learning will happen. Communication will happen. Language will develop.
And I mean, I think we've to sum up here, right? Communication is about engagement. It's about that reciprocal back and forth and building a relationship in all of its many forms. And, we often hear this, I want my student to communicate more. So we want that too. How do we do it? We want to motivate engagement and communication. And to do that, we have to be a partner who engages naturally and meaningfully. Um, so that again, comes back to us and why we are so excited that we completed these modules this school
Mhm.
year and that we can take all of this awesome learning and be fresh out of the gate next school year, ready to go.
Right. So for our last recap, AC is an umbrella term. It means many things. And again, you can go back up to that slide where we review all the different things that it encompasses. All language is learned through aided language input. So if it's developmentally, we've talked about a foreign language, AEC, it all is learned through that aided language input. Us speaking our words on their AEC system. That's how you're going to teach them vocabulary and language, how to put those words together, everything in communication. It has to be done through aided language input. Typical language development is our guide for interacting naturalistically. So we had a couple slides where we reviewed that. So just keeping that in the back of your mind whenever you are working on vocabulary and language and everything, and using some of those different strategies that we talked about that we use uh, to help guide typical language development. Communication partners foster language by these strategies: repeating, recasting, reframing, extending, and then providing that natural response and commenting. Communication, again, that little visual, those two people, the arrows back and forth. Communication is reciprocal. It's whenever there's that message that we don't know that the other person is going to say to us. That's communication, not repetition, not compliance, not a motor follow through. Tell me or find this on your device. Support emotional competence with compassion by providing that aided language input to help support that understanding. And we talked a lot about this with those different slides, working through those situations, the before, during, and after. And then the repetition with variety. And it's going to take time. And just compassion, understanding, and patience are going to go a long way.
All right, so resources on where to learn more. AbleNet University, it's a great website. They have tons of different professional development. We really like this archived webinar about social communication with AAC, so check that out. Again, we will share the Angelman Syndrome Foundation. If you have not yet bookmarked this, what are you waiting for? Do it this time. So many great resources on there. We love this one, multiple ones from their communication training series. We like the ones about book exploration engagement because that really can be a nice place to work on our skills about naturally engaging. It gives us a context to work on those skills as we're practicing. Again, reading as communication. And these are just great because it works on literacy and communication. Oh, these webinars are fabulous. This is also the power of turn taking is one to check out. And then again, Project Core, another one that we just love to pieces. Incorporating the universal core vocabulary into instructional routines. So again, taking charge and taking advantage of those communication opportunities. So definitely check these out.
And thank you so much for joining us for this whole Master Pal series that we've worked through. We really look forward to discussing this topic with you more in depth whenever we meet.